talk about if the Bruins do make a move, which one should they make? And this is one we've been sort of debating for the last 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 weeks so far. I'll take the point of I think the Bruins truly need a defender. I think you'll take the point of the Bruins really need a forward. So if they do make a move, Ryan, tell us why it needs to be a forward.
Yeah, so and I think if they do something, they'll probably get one of each. But I think that if you're going for like a high caliber of one and like a serviceable maybe depth piece of the other, I think you're going for the forward. We've known all along that this team's biggest struggles are scoring at even strength, and it continues to be an issue even despite the last game. Like, you don't want to get too hung up on one game. Like, it was enough to show you that this team has it in them, but you need something to stimulate that a bit so that it's happening more consistently. Even if that keeping the top two lines that way works, at the very least, I think you need somebody on the third line to get something going. Maybe get Charlie Coyle a little bit extra jump because he's been struggling. Ideally, you want someone that's going to reliably put the puck in the net themselves, but if it's also somebody that can stimulate the scoring of the other players, I think that works too. Like I said in previous weeks, of even when the Bruins had injuries to the defense, they were still the number one defense in the league. They weren't letting in many goals. They had like 6 straight games where they let in a goal or fewer. And they can play that defensive style well enough to keep the puck out of the net. What they're really missing is guys that can put the puck in the net. And I will I'll segue you into your point here too. I feel a little less strongly on this now that Carlo is week to week again. I think that's kind of an issue. I think a lot of my counting on needing a forward was assuming that at some point the defense would get healthy. So I do think that throws a bit of a monkey wrench into it. Because like we've said, the defense needs the right personnel to be able to play in a way that supports the offense. So I'm a little wishy-washy there, but I do still think that for the longest time, this team's need has been scoring, and that's not just going to go away. Like, the team will figure out how to play defense, but they need to figure out a way to score.
I'll make my counter argument to the scoring piece in my rebuttal section, but I'll first start by making my points on why I think getting a defenseman is so important. And it's just the Bruins really are a team that start from that conservative end, that defensive end. And you hear the line defense wins championships, and it's a little misleading because if you're always defending, you're not going to score goals. But that being able to retrieve pucks, make quick transitions, get the puck up ice is so important. And that is not more evident than when you watch the play of Charlie McAvoy and Matt Grzelcyk, especially when they play together. They have just been lights out together, not only from a possession standpoint, but from a goals for standpoint. You can see since they've started playing together, as many points as McAvoy had sort of racked up early in the season, his numbers are even better alongside Grzelcyk, and Grzelcyk continues to kind of show that he is capable of playing much higher in the lineup, as opposed to the worries we had for him before the season started. And so when those two guys are on the ice, they're retrieving pucks, they're sort of shutting down plays, they're retrieving pucks, they're pushing it up ice, and they're not giving it back. The rest of the Bruins defensemen cannot do that. Carlo can be, we'll assume he's healthy. Carlo can be a cog in that, but he can't do that by himself. Lausanne can be a cog in that, but he can't do it by himself. Zaboral may be capable of that down the road. Clifton, Tenorti, Kemper is a fine fill-in, and Moore is a fine fill-in. Vakanainen, they've soured on. There's no one else who can do that. So you're not allowing the rest of your team to play the way you want to because you're not retrieving the puck quick enough. You're making the forwards come back in the zone and play defense, and then just sort of surviving shifts and getting it out and getting off. And so to me, that's been one of their biggest challenges. It also means sort of overplaying McAvoy in certain spots as well. If you can get another guy that can play some tougher minutes for you too, you can also ease some of those tougher minutes off Grzelcyk, who continues to get whacked in the face repeatedly. Yeah, I know. I see you shaking your head at that one.
Went down again in this game. Thank God he came back.
Yeah.
Also, are you at
twice,
to jump in? But are you at a point where every time you see McAvoy go down, you hold your breath?
He took that one off we'll do a quick pause, but I'm done with my opening argument anyway. But he took that one in the ankle, and you know how like those can be real bad sometimes, right? They just catch the right part of the ankle, and you're done for weeks, if not longer. And he went down. He's a guy who takes a beating, but the wince on his face after that one. And then his response was to tackle the Penguin forward. And you're just like, all right, is this like rage pain that he's going after him with? And is that a bad sign too? And then he sort of hobbled back to the bench, and he ended up being okay. But yeah, that would be, you're talking about he really probably should be playing 25 plus minutes a night. And you can just tell they just don't want him. They just don't want to burn him out. But that's really what he should be playing each night. And if you're missing that from your lineup, like, oh no,
right.
that's the season. Then you sell because your season's over. So anyway, that's my opening arguments. Ryan, give me some rebuttals.
Yeah. I'll say again, like, even today they put up 7 goals. All of the goals were scored by the 4 people you would expect. You could argue whether you'd expect Krejci. He doesn't score a lot of goals. Even in a good year, he doesn't score a lot of goals. He sets them up. But those are the four Bruins forwards that come to mind when you think of the Bruins: Pastrnak, Bergeron, Krejci, and Marchand. Even when they're on 2 separate lines, but those are the guys you need them scoring. But it's the usual suspects, and you need something out of somebody else too. Something else I want to just throw in there, and maybe you can hit on this in your rebuttal, but we've been so caught up in the need of the left side of the defense. I've been surprised, even from the offseason a bit, that we haven't really expressed any need for help on the right side of the defense. Like in the offseason, people were talking about like, oh, you could use Carlo as a trade piece because the right side's so strong. But the right side would no longer be strong if Carlo was gone. You have McAvoy, but nobody else. Like, this was also at a time where you were assuming Miller maybe wasn't even going to play. So it was like, all right, you have a really good top 2, but who the hell is on the third pair? Like, you have guys you can put in. You have like 7 guys you can put on the left. They might not be very experienced or very high ceiling, but like there's bodies there. There aren't even bodies on the right. And now too, Miller seems to be hopefully getting closer, but Carlo's week to week again too. So you still got McAvoy there, but like, you got Clifton and Kampfer, your 2 other guys on the right side. Like, why have we not had any discussion of whether or not this is a need or that they should get a little, if nothing else, some more insurance there? And I get that there are fewer right-handed defensemen out there, but that doesn't mean it's not necessarily a spot of concern.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that. I think they're thin on D. I would argue to some degree on championship teams, Brendan Carlo in some cases is a third pairing D. And that's not to criticize Brendan Carlo. And look at Tampa Bay last year. They had Mikhail Sergachev playing third pair minutes, obviously getting power play time and stuff. And they were a unique team, but that's the kind of depth you need sometimes. You can hide some of your flaws sometimes as long as you have very few of them and you're so elite in other areas. But yeah, the Bruins, other than that top line, don't have an elite group, and they cannot hide that defensive core the way the Penguins did in their second Stanley Cup a bunch of years ago. So I really think that to that point that you need that. I'll sort of rebut the goal scoring a little bit, and I'll just sort of read a couple things. Krejci is not necessarily known for a lot of goals, but he's a career 13-14% shooter. He's shooting at 4.5% this year. DeBrusku's a career 11-12% shooter, is shooting at 7% this year. Coyle is shooting right around his career average, but he's getting chances at one of his lowest ever. So I think that you finally have Craig Smith starting to get back to his career averages. So I think that you have some guys who, if they can turn the tide of this season and get back to their norms, no better than their norms, I think they can provide some of that scoring much the way it was expected earlier in the year. And so I think you bet on those guys internally at forward, but there's no one you can bet on at defense other than maybe Carlo getting healthy and getting back to full form. And even then, like we just said, okay, he's not enough, and you're maybe even still asking a little much of him on a championship team. you have nothing else internally, to your point there as well. So while you might be able to get some of that out of your existing forwards, from your deed, you have what you have. And if it doesn't get better, you don't expect a Herculean effort from anybody, let alone regressing to their mean and playing, to their normal expectations. So that's my argument there for you, Ryan. What you got for me? Throw some stuff back.
I don't know. Offense is fun. I want more offense. Today was, or again, I keep saying today because I watched the game today, but today was fun. 7 goals are fun. Like, you let in 5 goals and you still won the game. Like, if you can find a way to score more than the name of the game is scoring more goals than your opponent, and that's what they've been struggling to do. Like, games where they should easily win on the strength of their defense, they're not scoring. Like, they've lost 2 games 1-0 to the Devils, where they had 40 plus shots, but they weren't quality enough to get them in the net. It's just I've exhausted most of my argument. As I already said, the injuries have kind of twisted me a little toward the defense anyway. So my heart isn't in it as much as it was the last few weeks.
Ryan, you need the stubborn conviction, regardless.
Stubborn conviction is not a strong suit of mine.
Whether you're right or wrong, you need stubborn conviction. If you've met my family, you know that we have that in spades. So I can totally know that I'm incorrect and never give up on my hill that I'm dying on. I as a card carrying member of the Goalie Guild, I will share that I have no problem with 1-0 games. Those aren't so bad. As long as they're exciting. I don't like boring, trappy 20 shot to 17 1-0 games. Those suck, right? But again, I'll sort of counter with, I think that one of the biggest things holding them back is the fact that the D aren't getting the puck up to them, and that they've had to modify their breakouts in their play to accommodate for weaker defensemen. And so I'm hopeful that they can rectify that, and they can kind of make a couple quick little tactical adjustments, and maybe that does help some of the underperforming forwards break out as well. So I guess that can be my closing argument, unless you want to make one.
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll go back to my start, and I'll say that a good defense will be what helps spark a good offense. And so I'll leave it there, and we'll put a little bow in our great debates around the trade deadline. I will throw one more thing at you, Ryan, and this was not on the list, but similarly to how we ended our first one with what ifs and things we need to consider. Tuukka Rask does not necessarily look like he's coming back anytime soon. And Halak, has been playing all right the last couple of games. His percentages haven't been ideal, but he's done more than enough to win, thankfully. Vladar had one great game, one sort of so-so game, or 2 good games, one sort of so-so game. One game where he didn't have to do that much, I guess, but one, so that counts. Do the Bruins need to consider a goalie in the trade market?
For as much as we hear Leafs talk about, Freddie Anderson might be hurt and they need to go get a goalie in case he's not there, so you don't have to play Michael Hutchinson. I suppose that argument's there, just kind of insurance, but the Bruins have done strange things in the past for at least down the stretch to get them into the playoffs. There was a year where they signed Marty Turco late in the season after the trade deadline, which you can do, but they're not eligible for the playoffs. And it was solely because Thomas and Rask were both hurt. So they needed somebody to play games to make sure they stayed in the playoff race. But I would bring up just the point of in-season goalie trades never work out well. It might be an area of concern, but I don't necessarily know that you're going to fix it at the trade deadline. The biggest example I can think of is, because you don't see many of them, is the Ryan Miller trade a bunch of years ago, where he played really well down the stretch and then crapped his pants in the playoffs to the Blues. And honestly, the goalie they traded away in that deal was Jarro Halak, who historically had been pretty good for them, but they were never satisfied with. Which I think is kind of similar to how he is with the Bruins. He's been very good for them, but you still don't really quite feel comfortable with him as the guy going in the playoffs.
fascinating career, but he just kind of keeps kicking and keeps being a serviceable and to above average NHL goalie. Just a fascinating career.